Part 1.
You'll hear an interview conversation between a banker and a customer. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Listen carefully and answer the questions 1 to 7.
Hi, can I open a bank account, please?
Sure, come on in. Make yourself at home. I'll just get some details for you. It won't take long.
OK, right.
What kind of account do you want?
A deposit account.
OK, I've got the application form here then. Have a look at this leaflet. We have several types.
I've decided on the one called Classic.
Good, that's fine. Can I have your full name, please?
Yes, it's Jonathan Fox. That's Jonathan.
Oh, right. Thank you. And what's your date of birth, please?
The 21st of January, 1970.
Right. Do you have another bank account in the UK?
No, not yet. This is the first one.
OK, fine. And what is your address in the UK, sir?
10 Island House, South Quay.
That's East London, isn't it?
Yes.
Near Canary Wharf, right?
Yes, that's right.
How long have you been at your current address?
Just around 1 month, actually.
OK, that's fine. Can I ask for a previous address?
Sure. It's Flat 3, Canada House, Queen Street.
Is that all?
Yes.
That's Edinburgh, isn't it?
Yes.
Edinburgh. OK, thank you. Do you have a daytime telephone or mobile phone number?
Yes. I think the number of my office, it's 0207 235 6735. Would you like my home phone number too?
Yes, please.
It's 0204 675 1222.
Lovely.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at the questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Right. What do you do for a living in the UK, sir?
I am working at an English language school in central London as a tutor. It's my main job.
OK. Now we usually ask for a piece of information for checking your identity, for security reasons, if you phone us.
Sure.
What name is your mother's first name? Because it's less likely to be known.
OK, it's Monica.
Thank you.
Yes, Monica. It's Russian.
OK, good. And how much would you like to open your account with?
I've only brought £1,000.
OK, fine. How often would you like to receive bank statements?
I won't be needing bank statements. What about an online banking service?
OK, just a moment, please. Can I check in the box on the screen?
Sure. I was also wondering about a mortgage service.
Sure. Can you just wait a moment? I'll introduce you to a mortgage marketing manager.
Thank you.
That is the end of Part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You'll hear a tourism program, The Elizabeth House. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer the questions 11 to 14.
Hi everybody, good to see you again. This morning I'll tell you about the Elizabeth House in Canterbury, once home of the famous carpenter Jonathan Owen. He bought the house in 1965, although he had first seen it 5 years earlier. Actually, he was interested in the house as a traditional flat in England, and he paid £5,000 for it without a second thought, because of it having standard and regulation building methods during the Middle Ages in the UK. At that time, he had worked at the University of Canterbury as a head carpenter who managed with a small building company. His professional success was abundant, but his family life wasn't so successful. His parents had suffered from diabetes and mental disease, and his brother Dan was ill with pneumonia. Moving to Elizabeth House, he started his new life. Jonathan considered the home a pure example of traditional East England country house and did some of his successful building structure work here. The backyard and garden of the house became calm and peaceful. The materials used to make the wall, chimney and roof were collected from the local area. Most of all, oak trees were in the front of the main gate.
Before you hear the rest of the program, you have some time to look at the questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
As you go up the path, there's the rose garden on your right, and you will find to your left an area which has interesting types of sunflower as well as some lovely carnation. It is known as the sun rainbow and was designed by his brother Dan, who had studied gardening arts in Paris. The next destination is the Japanese footbridge, with exotic Asian mountain plants and fruit growing on it. Follow the path round to the second corner, and on your left you will see the entrance to the pear tree, with its 200-year-old branches go through the path until you've reached the front of the house. Now I'll give you a couple of hours to wander around this lovely building. Your tour guide will introduce and explain about its history and viewpoints to you. If you need to buy any of Jonathan's handbooks or other souvenirs, you can enter the house where you'll find the shop, which is located between the path and the water mill. I expect by this time you may also be in need of a rest and some refreshments from the snack bar. If you have a break, there is a lovely walk down towards the River Cotton. This is the best view for visitors. You can cross the field which spreads along the path close to the windmill. In autumn, this area will open a small event or festival which is definitely worth a visit. It is familiar a good place for growing strawberries. Every season, most of the residents are ready to make local produce. Also, the local council helps to improve the grape festival by promoting and marketing it through online and offline methods. Last year, around 100 tons of grapes were harvested and sold at the city mall. We'll now have a good chance to see an orchard behind the house.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You are going to hear a conversation between a student and a driving instructor. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen to the tape and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hello, I'm going to be your driving instructor today. Are you ready to begin?
Hi, hope you don't mind. It's my first time driving a car.
Of course not. That's my job. I teach people like you how to become a safe and responsible driver. So let's begin. Remember, the most important rule of driving: safety first. There are some steps to follow. First, you should put on your seatbelt. You should always remember to do that. In case of an accident or emergency, having a seatbelt on is of utmost importance.
Okay, I have my seatbelt on. Now what should I do?
Start the car. Good. Now make sure that the steering wheel is in the proper position and that your seat is not too far or not too close to the pedals.
I'm all ready to go. Should I shift into first gear?
Don't forget to put the parking brake down. You don't want to drive with that up.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot. If I have the parking brake on, I won't be able to accelerate.
Yes, that's right. Now put the car in reverse and slowly back out of the parking space. Good. Put the car in first gear.
When should I shift? Is it better to shift slowly or quickly?
You can shift whenever you feel is appropriate. This means shifting should occur smoothly. Do not shift too slowly or you will stall. Shifting too fast will waste gas. Shifting is simple. Just remember to shift smoothly. To shift, you will have to push the clutch and then push the gas pedal.
Now look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen to the tape and answer questions 25 to 30.
Remember, smoothly is the key to good shifting.
Like this?
Yes, that's good. Now keep it slow. Don't drive very fast just yet. Be sure to constantly check your mirrors for oncoming traffic. Always be aware of everything that is around you, including 3 important things. Remember these 3: people crossing the streets, other cars, and bicycles riding next to you.
What should I do if I see a yellow light?
Well, it's always better to brake instead of trying to run it. But if you're travelling at a speed where it's impossible to stop in time, then you should try to make it across the intersection. But remember, you should always try to stop. It's the safest way to avoid an accident.
Even if I have to brake very suddenly?
Yes, even if you have to brake suddenly.
What about if a driver behind me is going a lot faster than I am?
You should always be ready to move to a slower lane if a driver behind you is forcing you to go faster than you are comfortable with. Never try to speed up to accommodate a faster driver. You could risk an accident or a speeding ticket. It's better to let him go.
That sounds like good advice.
Be careful. There is a sharp turn up ahead. Remember to brake before turns. Otherwise, you might flip over if your speed is too high going into a turn.
Got it. I know that I should always try to observe all traffic safety.
That's right. If safety is not your first priority, it will make driving very dangerous for you and other drivers on the road. Okay, park the car here. You did a great job today for your first day. I'll see you in 3 days.
Thanks so much. I will see you then.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have 30 seconds to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You'll hear a man giving a lecture on nuclear fusion. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 33.
I'd like to start by thanking so many of you for attending this, my first public lecture at this magnificent university. I'm going to be talking to you today about nuclear fusion. Before I proceed further, I would like to apologize on behalf of some of our newspapers for the sensationalist and hopelessly inaccurate articles that have been published on the subject over the years. I must confess that my own interest in the subject was actually stimulated by an article published more than 50 years ago in a popular Sunday tabloid with the impressive title, Power from the Sea. Today, most people would probably interpret such a title as an introduction to a discussion on the latest developments in renewable energy sources, such as wave technology or generating electricity from tidal flows. But back then, little, if any, progress had been made in these fields since the invention of the water wheel. As I recall, following coverage of the opening of the world's first commercial nuclear power station, more than 50 years ago now, at Calder Hall in 1956, the article promised that we would have limitless, almost free electricity within 10 years. It claimed that we could do this using an isotope of water, deuterium, from the sea. This would be used in reactors to combine simple molecules of hydrogen to form helium, releasing energy in the process. Of course, this is different from the process of nuclear fission, which today's nuclear reactors use. I wouldn't like to say that the article I read as a boy was totally inaccurate. It's true that the concept of producing energy from nuclear fusion, essentially reproducing the reactions by which our sun and other stars produce energy, depends on fusing atoms of hydrogen, but the timescale suggested was hopelessly wrong. To this day, despite some very embarrassing false claims from scientists who should have known better, we have not been able to produce energy from nuclear fusion in a controllable way. Let me make clear what I mean by this statement, before some journalist in the audience gets hold of the wrong end of the stick. Yes, we have been able to fuse hydrogen atoms to produce helium and a release of energy, but the balance account has always been negative. we've always had to put more energy into the reaction than we've ever succeeded in getting out. We know the theory works, but we still do not know if we can get fusion to work for us and solve the problem of our energy needs.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 34 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 34 to 40.
Here, I will briefly explain these problems before going on to give you a summary of the innovative ways being tested to overcome them. First of all, we have to try to understand the incredible physical conditions that exist inside a natural nuclear fusion reactor, such as the Sun. To start with, we have to create temperatures never experienced on our planet. Indeed, if we had experienced the temperatures required, then our planet would never have formed. We have to generate temperatures of at least 100 million degrees Celsius in a carefully controlled environment before we can even hope to produce a fusion reaction. The problems are immense, but it can be done. Many of you will know that you can put your hand into a very hot oven and not get burnt, provided you do not touch any of the surfaces. I won't go into the reasons for this phenomenon here, but we are applying roughly the same principles in designs for fusion reactors. I think I can promise you that the heat will be confined to a very small area. The other major problem we have to find a solution to is pressure. The pressures in a massive body like the Sun are vast, and this is what brings the hydrogen atoms into such close proximity to one another that they fuse into helium. We may not have to achieve the same pressures in a fusion reactor, but even so, it is a huge technological problem. What, then, makes me hopeful about the future of energy from nuclear fusion? Perhaps surprisingly, it is developments in laser technology. We can now use lasers to control the nuclear fuel pellets so that they remain suspended inside the reactor without touching the sides. Remember that these pellets are quite small, and because they contain atoms of deuterium and tritium, the two isotopic forms of hydrogen that can be used in these reactions, they are quite light. The lasers will also compress the fuel pellet to raise the pressure to that required to initiate the fusion reaction. Another, far more powerful laser will be used to heat the fuel pellet to the temperature required. This laser, if you like, will act as the trigger to start the reaction. Once started, it is hoped that the reaction will produce enough energy to maintain itself, and also that it will produce a surplus in the form of heat that can be used to produce the steam needed to drive turbines in order to generate the electricity the world needs. To give you some idea of how much energy we can produce, it has been calculated that just 1 kilogram of fusion fuel is capable of producing the same amount of energy as 10,000 tons of fossil fuel. I think you would agree that such an objective is worth working towards. I believe, and I am not alone in this, that nuclear fusion could supply the world's energy needs for centuries to come.
That is the end of part 4.